Nature certainly plays a big part in my creative process. The clay that we live on here is actually part of the buildings that are built here. You know, they were built 300 years ago from the clay in the ground here that we're standing on now. And when I first came here, I wanted to incorporate that clay into my work if I could, and hence dug the clay from the river and I use it in the glaze to put on the pots. I like to make marks on the pots, which usually come from found objects of sorts, bits of shell which I find on the beach down near Lyme Regis and beyond. I make pots with a purpose, so bowls, jugs, plates. They're handmade on the wheel and they're wood fired and perhaps have taken influence from historical pots. The clay that I use is basically a mixture of Devon and Dorset ball clay. I chose this clay simply because it's good for gardenware, it's good for ovenware, it's good for tableware. It's a general purpose clay which throws nicely. Not all clays lend themselves to making pots on the wheel, which is predominantly what I do. So bottles, I think, probably my favourite pots to make. To create a full fat bellied bottle and then to close it in at the top. Something when you see it done for the first time, you kind of believe it's not possible. I think making pots is interestingly enough, it's a repetitive process, and I quite enjoy repetitive process. I've realised after all these years. I'll make a group of pots at a time, a family of jugs, a family of bottles, whatever it might be at the time. But in that process of making the same shape from the same lump of clay to the same height, to the same width, there's a sort of meditation about it, really, that you can almost drift off. Glazing, potting, wedging clay, they're all you're repeating yourself over and over again, and in that process I get a lot of satisfaction. You can sit at a potter's wheel of a day and think, well, what shall I make today? And it's endless, you know, the forms, the size, the function of a pot, it's endless. And so I tend these days to stick to pots that I've been making for years, which have been what I call my bread and butter pots. Each time I fire the kiln, I always try a few experiments. Maybe a new clay, maybe putting the glaze on a different pot that I haven't put on before. Quite often some of my students' pots teach me lessons because they're using the same clay and the same glaze in a different way to the way that I would, in which case I learn something from seeing what they do with the pot and maybe put that into my work as well. It's a very kind of changing organic process all the time.